welcome to the For We Are Many podcast. My name is Rob.
And my name is Trisha. You just can't see me yet. But I made it.
We will be reading from Eldridge Cleaver's Soul and Ice today.
Hell yeah. What's with the super confused look on your face?
I was trying to see the title of the chapter and it opened up the YouTube link. That's not what I was trying to do at all. The title of the chapter is The White Race and Its Heroes, and it's the first letter in the book that he wrote as part of part 2. Part 2 is titled Blood of the Beast, and this letter is titled The White Race and Its Heroes. The link to the PDF that we're using is already in the video description. And I'm just trying to find the audiobook real quick. I meant to have this all pulled up in time, but I kind of forgot that I almost forgot that why is it not popping up? I almost forgot that we were doing this stream early today. Well, Thursdays in general for the time being, for Kwame's book reading. He will be reading, I should say, we'll be reading along to his autobiography, My Search for Answers, Truth and Meaning. It's available on Amazon, or you can contact him on Facebook. There's also an ebook version of it. All proceeds from the ebook go to building and renovating. Well, I guess renovating would be the more accurate term, whatever. The Hassan Shakur Community Center in Newark, New Jersey. First new Panther office built in the U.S. in almost 50 years, as I understand it.
Yeah, what they're doing out there is dope. They have created resources that their community was lacking and brought that to the table. They're literally putting the 10-point platform to work there, and I love it. That's praxis.
Right. So once I find this audio book, which I will also give you the link for, I'm going to take a moment to share our stream to some groups. If you guys could do the same, I would greatly appreciate that.
Ooh, knocking stuff. Don't mind me, I'm being super graceful over here.
Typically. I kid.
Oh, hi, John. I see John's in the comments.
I haven't even had a chance to look at the comments yet. So I'm actually starting to wonder if there is an audiobook for part 2. Because now that I think about it, they had only done part 1 on that channel, but I am not finding an audiobook for part 2.
I thought we had looked before and found one. Shit.
I thought we had 2, but the channel that we use for part 1 doesn't have one, and so far I am not having good luck finding one. I'm not done looking yet, but
well, I'll try to help here and see what I can find.
Oh, hold on. I found it's even from the same people. That's funny. I don't know why it wasn't showing up. Maybe it's because they abbreviated book, audio BK part 2 instead of audio book. I wonder I
Ah,
wonder if that's why I couldn't find it. But
yeah, because it
um
wouldn't fit your search criteria
yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah, but I found it. So we're
Okay,
good.
great. Good shit.
Now I can go into the
Okay.
comments
Well,
uh and give
I
you
mean, so far it's just John, so
yeah,
we'll
well
just say hi,
it's
John.
showing
Oh,
four
hey,
viewers. Hey, there's Nate. How you
Nathan's here.
doing? You are more than welcome to join us in here if you would like to. If not, I get that too. We're
Right.
annoying.
No
It's
pressure.
cool.
Right. Just a couple of fucking weirdos. We're
Okay,
talking
so
cannabis.
now that I've found my bearings, anyway, the
Right.
PDF that we are using is already in the video description. The audio book is now in the comments. Once again, that is property of examinfo on YouTube. Um, Make sure to subscribe. I actually haven't. I see that they've been like recently releasing stuff, but I actually haven't taken the time to tune in yet, so I'm not even sure what the rest of their content's like. But one of these days I will. I hope everybody's having a lovely Thursday.
Hell yeah. Lovely as it can get.
Yeah, like all the way lovely. And now, if you are wondering, I am sharing this to groups. Um, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Uh, Not just today, but in general. Obviously, we do our current event streams every Tuesday. Um, that's okay, Natalie. You can come back and watch it when you're not working. As I said when we went live, we opted to do our Thursday streams earlier, so we weren't conflicting with Kwame's book reading. Um, we have posted about that on the page and in the groups. Um, I'll try to make sure to share that post to the page and group again today. Um, I guess it just depends if I remember, to be honest. So, any of you guys in our group chat, if you want to remind me in a little bit, that'd be great. Also, I know a lot of you are in other groups that we participate in or as well. But I'd like to invite everybody that's watching or listening to this to join our group, um, the For We Are Many Education and Discussion group. Um, we've been having a lot of good conversation in there. A couple days ago, we had a couple trolls in the same day, which is interesting because we almost never have trolls, and then there was like 3 in one day, and it was just kind of like, huh?
Right. They just
Who
came
let
back
you
to
in
back.
here?
Right. Get the
On
fuck
the
back under
same
your bridge.
post. On the same post.
Right. It's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Who approved your entry?
Well, I mean, one of them, to be fair, we, as Chelsea pointed out in the comments, we were kind of, already talking shit before we approved it because he had like some transphobic shit in his public
Oh, that
reviews.
weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we kind of just let him into, like
Control
give him
him.
enough give it give him enough rope to hang himself with, and it took him all of like 10 minutes.
Jeez. Something wrong with the world today. I don't know what it is.
Hey, be careful. We might get a copyright flag for that.
That's why I kept it at only one line. Something's wrong with our eyes.
I guess I
Just
should address that too. Actually, last on Tuesday we had a little bit of fun, right? We showed a 30-second South Park clip and discussed how on the nose it was, and apparently Facebook didn't like that. Or no, that wasn't Facebook, that was YouTube, sorry. And then
was it?
later in the stream, we played like a couple of clips from George Carlin rants, and one of those got muted by Facebook. Um,
Only one?
yeah, yeah. But
What the fuck?
to be fair, it was probably the first one, and the owner or whatever was probably the owner, who I would like to point out is a member of the big club that George Carlin was talking about that we're all not in.
Right. But they
Yeah,
somehow own his footage.
yeah.
Whatever.
Um, I guess I just wanted to address that if something happens and our page gets another copyright strike and we have to start over, the group is going to be a crucial tool in making that happen. So, or if we get pulled for something else, I mean, we've gotten flagged for our narratives in the past, you know,
Right.
like, I mean, now that they can't get us with that, and they removed the option to dispute a fair usage of something on Facebook, which the law allows for the use of copyrighted footage in certain circumstances, such as for educational material or entertainment. You know, like, I mean, fucking reaction videos are just fine because, you know, like they pause it every so often and add their own content, but we're not allowed to do that for political satire. I don't get it.
Right.
But anyway, I digress. I'm getting really off topic. We're already 15 minutes into the stream and haven't even started the book. But I just wanted to address that. We did get a copyright strike for on 2 different platforms for the last stream. Um, so I'm not probably gonna do that anymore. But also, if the boot is coming down from Facebook and from YouTube, we might have to start over, especially on Facebook. Facebook is my primary concern. YouTube is just more or less like, hey, so we blocked your video, don't do that again. Facebook is like, hey, so we left your video up, but we muted this piece, and if you do it again, we'll disable your page.
Which is one more reason why we need to actually just start driving more traffic to our website, www.forwearemany.org. You
I
can create
completely
an
agree.
account there to be able to comment on stuff and interact with us. I'm not sure what we would need to do to have that actually be the hosting of our streaming, like we talked about before.
Yeah, I don't think there's
But
a way to do the live streams. I mean, we can host video on there, and I
yeah,
mean, we might have to buy a bigger plan because how much video can you host for free? Um,
right.
but that being said, we'll figure it out. And yes, Natalie, Twitch, I was also going to suggest we haven't ever had any strikes on Twitch, and we've been streaming to Twitch since day one.
Right.
Um,
Also, thank you, Natalie. Glad you enjoyed that.
Oh, her other comment. I was like,
I'm
what?
confused
Twitch?
for a moment.
She enjoyed Twitch?
No. She enjoyed my little stint of Aerosmith.
Fair. All right. So I'm going to dive into, once again, this is part 2 of the book, titled, what is it? Blood and Beast? Blood of the Beast, sorry. And this letter is titled The White Race and Its Heroes. I'm sure that you all know that we don't own Eldridge Cleaver's book or the audio book that is someone else reading. Eldridge Cleaver's book, but out of an abundance of caution, I would like to just clarify that we do not own this material.
All right, this is for educational purposes, because that's what the fuck we exist for. We as a business, as a podcast, as a independent media, that's what we exist for.
Yeah, amen to that.
Part 2. Blood of the Beast. The white race and its heroes. White people cannot, in the generality, be taken as models of how to live. Rather, the white man is himself in sore need of new standards, which will release him from his confusion and place him once again in fruitful communion with the depths of his own being. James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. Right from the go, let me make one thing absolutely clear. I am not now, nor have I ever been, a white man. Nor, I hasten to add, am I now a black Muslim, although I used to be. But I am an Fae watcher, a member of that uncharted, amorphous league which has members on all continents and the islands of the seas. Fae Watchers Anonymous, we might be called, because we exist concealed in the shadows wherever colored people have known oppression by whites, by white enslavers, colonizers, imperialists, and neo-colonialists. Did it irritate Patriot for me to string those epithets out like that? Tolerate me. My intention was not necessarily to sprinkle salt over anyone's wounds. I did it primarily to relieve a certain pressure on my brain. Do you cop that? If not, then we're in trouble, because we Fae watchers have a pronounced tendency to slip into that mood. If it is bothersome to you, it is quite a task for me, because not too long ago it was my way of life to preach, as ardently as I could, that the white race is a race of devils, created by their maker to do evil and make evil appear as good. That the white race is the natural, unchangeable enemy of the black man, who is the original man, owner, maker, cream of the planet Earth. That the white race was soon to be destroyed by Allah, and that the black man would then inherit the earth, which has always, in fact, been his. I have, so to speak, washed my hands in the blood of the martyr, Malcolm X, whose retreat from the precipice of madness created new room for others to turn about in, and I am now caught up in that tiny space, attempting a maneuver of my own. Having renounced the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, I find that a rebirth does not follow automatically of its own accord, that a void is left in one's vision, and this void seeks constantly to obliterate itself by pulling one back to one's former outlook. I have tried a tentative compromise by adopting a select vocabulary, so that now when I see the whites of their eyes, instead of saying devil or beast, I say imperialist or colonialist, and everyone seems to be happier. In silence, we have spent our years watching the old phase, trying to understand them on the principle that you have a better chance coping with the known than with the unknown. Some of us have been, and some still are, interested in learning whether it is ultimately possible to live in the same territory with people who seem so disagreeable to live with. Still others want to get as far away from old phase as possible. What we share in common is the desire to break the old phase power over us. At times of fundamental social change, such as in the era in which we live, it is easy to be deceived by the onrush of events, beguiled by the craving for social stability, into mistaking transitory phenomena for enduring reality. The strength and permanence of white backlash in America is just such an illusion. However much this rearguard action might seem to grow in strength, the initiative and the future rest with those whites and blacks who have liberated themselves from the master-slave syndrome, and these are to be found mainly among the youth. Over the past 12 years, there has surfaced a political conflict between the generations that is deeper even than the struggle between the races. Its first dramatic manifestation was within the ranks of the Negro people, when college students in the South, fed up with Uncle Tom's hat-in-hand approach to revolution, threw off the yoke of the NAACP. When these students initiated the first sit-ins, their spirit spread like a raging fire across the nation, and the technique of nonviolent direct action, constantly refined and honed into a sharp cutting tool, swiftly matured. The older Negro leaders, who are now all die-hard advocates of this tactic, scolded the students for sitting in. The students rained down contempt upon their hoary heads. In the pre-sit-in days, these conservative leaders had always succeeded in putting down insurgent elements among the Negro people. A measure of their power prior to the students' rebellion is shown by their success in isolating such great black men as the late W.E.B. Du Bois and Paul Robeson. When these stalwarts, refusing to bite their tongues, lost favor with the U.S. government by their unstinting efforts to link up the Negro Revolution with national liberation movements around the world.
So, I want to address just that last little bit here, and I mean, we see that the people of color, the people of African descent here in the United States that we tend to focus on are overly liberalized. I mean, Malcolm X is a well-known name, but I mean, well, I guess to be fair, he's probably not the best example. The best example would be MLK. Obviously, the later into his life he got, the further away from the liberal ideas that white people tend to parrot about him.
Right. Like he was very quickly radicalizing further to the left, thus the whole poor people's movement. I mean, he was moving away from the neoliberal type fucking way of addressing things.
Yeah.
I think that's part of why he got killed.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Same thing with Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton, he started organizing across racial lines. You know, like, okay, so they try to paint Malcolm X as some sort of like terroristic black nationalist, right?
Right.
But they try to make MLK sound like this like peaceful sunshine and rainbows type of character, when that's just not the case. Like, yes, he was nonviolent, but nonviolent doesn't necessarily mean non-militant.
Right. And even his stances on nonviolence changed in his last few years of life, because he came to realize that sometimes it's actually necessary to commit acts of violence in order to defend oneself against violence, especially systemic violence. And his awakening to those things and speaking on them really pissed off a lot of people.
True.
In the government.
True. And I mean, like, that's the thing. If people try to white splain MLK, this is an issue that we've had like back in the early days of the podcast. If we try to talk about if somebody's trying to white splain MLK or Malcolm X and we try to set the record straight, they'll just try to be like, well, what do you know? You're white. Like, listen to the words coming out of his mouth. What the fuck do you mean?
Right. Right. It's like, wait a fucking minute. actually analyze what's being said here.
I think Nathan hit the nail on the head with this comment. Yes, because they are scared shitless that we will organize against them if we cross races. Because that's exactly what needs to be done.
Uh-huh. Yep, that's what's a true threat to this fucked up system and its ability to exploit.
Yep. All right. Well, back to the text.
The, quote, Negro leaders and the whites who depended upon them to control their people were outraged by the impudence of the students, calling for a moratorium on student initiative. They were greeted instead by an encore of sit-ins, and retired to their ivory towers to contemplate the new phenomenon. Others, less prudent, because held on a tighter leash by the whites, had their careers brought to an abrupt end because they thought they could lead a black-white backlash against the students, only to find themselves in a kind of Bay of Pigs. Negro college presidents who expelled students from all Negro colleges in an attempt to quash the demonstrations ended up losing their jobs. The victorious students would no longer allow them to preside over the campuses. The spontaneous protests on southern campuses over the repressive measures of their college administrations were an earnest of the free speech upheaval which years later was to shake the UC campus at Berkeley. In countless
There is a part of that sentence missing. The word forerunners was the part of the sentence. I just lost it on my screen, though. Oh, yeah. Over the repressive measures of their college administrations were an earnest forerunner of the free speech upheaval, which years later was to shake the UC campus at Berkeley.
ways, the rebellion of the black students served as a catalyst for the brewing revolt of the whites. What has suddenly happened is that the white race has lost its heroes. Worse, its heroes have been revealed as villains, and its greatest heroes as the arch-villains. The new generations of whites, appalled by the sanguine and despicable record carved over the face of the globe by their race in the last 500 years, are rejecting the panoply of white heroes, whose heroism consisted in erecting the inglorious edifice of colonialism and imperialism. Heroes whose careers rested on a system of foreign and domestic exploitation rooted in the myth of white supremacy and the manifest destiny of the white race. The emerging shape of a new world order and the requisites for survival in such a world are fostering in young whites a new outlook. They recoil in shame from the spectacle of cowboys and pioneers, their heroic forefathers whose exploits filled earlier generations with pride, galloping across a movie screen, shooting down Indians like Coke bottles. Even Winston Churchill, who was looked upon by older whites as perhaps the greatest hero of the 20th century, even he, because of the system of which he was a creature and which he served, is an arch-villain in the eyes of the young white rebels. At the close of World War II, national liberation movements in the colonized world picked up new momentum and audacity, seeking to cash in on the democratic promises made by the Allies during the war. The Atlantic Charter, signed by President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill in 1941, affirming, quote, the right of all people to choose the form of government under which they may live.
So, sorry for pausing it in the middle of the statement here. I just want to make reference to the Atlantic Charter. To be honest, I don't know that much about it. I went to public school. We don't talk about international stuff like we should, especially not stuff that involves Stalin. Because yes, it was signed. It went into effect after it was signed by Roosevelt and Churchill, but the Allies weren't just Britain and the U.S.
Right. There's a lot of fuckery that went on there.
Yeah, but I just wanted to reiterate that the Atlantic Charter, signed by President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill in 1941, affirmed the right of all people to choose the form of government under which they may live. I think that was more or less a death knell to feudalism. I don't think that they expected the proletarian revolutions that followed it.
Right. It's like all that was a legal acknowledgement of what is actually a human right. Like we don't need permission from any fucking government to tell the government that is our employees how they may exist and operate. That's not their call, it's ours. It's sad that it took even something like that to declare it for it to be acknowledged as a thing.
Right. He goes on to say that it established the principle, although it took years of post-war struggle to give this piece of rhetoric even the appearance of reality. And I think that's true because then, you fast forward 10 years and you've got the Korean War. Right. You fast forward another 10 years after that, and you have, Ho Chi Minh leading the rice farmers to victory over the world's largest imperial power. And that is one of those principles that he organized behind: the right of all people to choose the form of government under which they live.
And the frame of mind and even phrasing there needs to change to the government over which they live, not under. Because that's part of the problem is our fucking employees see themselves as authorities when they're not. The whole point of leadership is to serve the people, not to rule.
Well, right. And I would say that, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that my argument to that would be that there is still a government over the people in a communist setup, but it's of the people. Just like our founding documents say, by the people, of the people, for the people. But the difference is that
there's actually it's not behind a paywall. You don't have to be a fucking millionaire or billionaire to even have a chance at being in office. It is actually a public fucking service job. You are an employee of the public.
Right, and things might be run generally top down, but the decisions, look at Cuba, the decisions are made from the neighborhood level up.
Yep.
So yes, there is a central committee that with heads of other committees that essentially run the country. Yes, so okay, it's under that type of government, but they have an almost 90% turnout in every election. They nominate, whoever, like you were saying, it's not behind a paywall to run for office, and it's always from a place of service.
Right. They understand that they are accountable to the people, not necessarily the other way around. Because to be fair, the only actual rules of law as far as governing over people is basic limitations of ethics. Like, don't fucking go around killing and raping. When it comes to the rest of it, it is supposed to completely be public service.
Absolutely.
And yep, John, you're correct. White conservatives love the Bill of Rights, just not minorities having them. Sadly. part of the problem is the fucking extreme right wing, the fascists. They
the white
don't give.
supremacists. I mean, ultimately,
Yes.
he's setting the stage to talk about how the Atlantic Charter, furthered white supremacy.
Right.
And I mean, like, obviously, based on the title of the chapter, the white race and its heroes, this is kind of picking apart. I don't even want to call it white culture, is it?
Uh, is that even a thing?
Right. I
Because
mean, bland
white isn't
food.
an actual ethnicity. White is a descriptor. An actual ethnicity would be like if you're Swedish, then you would have Swedish culture. If you're French, you would have French culture. But white culture, at least how it exists here in America, is simply nothing but a side effect of
Repackaged white
supremacy.
supremacy.
Yes, it's white supremacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's what is American culture? Consumerism? Come the fuck on.
I
And
mean,
sucking
ultimately,
corporate
yeah.
profit.
Consumerism and like rampant fucking materialism,
Yep.
and not the Marxist kind.
Right, not actual material needs, but just being materialistic and buying the fuck out of everything because you're told that buying a bunch of stuff to impress other people is what makes you successful. Because see what I have? Ugh. It's disturbing.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, back to the text.
End quote, established the principle, although it took years of post-war struggle to give this piece of rhetoric even the appearance of reality. And just as world revolution has prompted the oppressed to reevaluate their self-image in terms of the changing conditions, to slough off the servile attitudes inculcated by long years of subordination, the same dynamics of change have prompted the white people of the world to re-evaluate their self-image as well, to disabuse themselves of the master race psychology developed over centuries of imperial hegemony. It is among the white youth of the world that the greatest change is taking place. It is they who are experiencing the great psychic pain of waking into consciousness to find their inherited heroes turned by events into villains. Communication and understanding between the older and younger generations of whites has entered a crisis. The elders, who, in the tradition of privileged classes or races, genuinely do not understand the youth, trapped by old ways of thinking and blind to the future, have only just begun to be vexed because the youth have only just begun to rebel. So thoroughgoing is the revolution in the psyches of white youth that the traditional tolerance which every older generation has found it necessary to display is quickly exhausted, leaving a gulf of fear, hostility, mutual misunderstanding, and contempt.
So again, I just want to like elaborate on this a little more. He's absolutely right that I mean this is still happening today, probably on a bigger scale than what he was writing about. This waking into consciousness to find their inherited heroes turned by events into villains. This is why people are so freaking out about the things like the 1619 project or critical race theory, or as people like you and I call it, history. Like there's not really another way to say it. But this is probably happening on an even bigger scale than it was. in the mid 60s when he wrote this book. But I mean, like that's where the boomer versus millennial divide comes from. The boomers, that is, are, in the tradition of privileged classes, genuinely do not understand the youth. In other words, the youth see what's going on in the world around them.
Because they're paying attention, because it fucking affects them.
Right. And also him saying because the youth have only just begun to rebel. I mean, fast forward a few years when he was in the Black Panther Party. If I was alive at that point in history, I would have been convinced that I was living during the revolution. I mean, straight up.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, there's a few points in time over the last couple hundred years that I would have been totally convinced of it at those points in time, just as I am of it now. But now I'm seeing, more angst. It's amongst a much larger portion of the population than it was the last couple of times that we even had.
Yeah, I mean, even for Occupy.
Happening here. Right. Right.
I mean, we saw more people out protesting in 2020 following the death of George Floyd than we did even during Occupy, which was 110 cities, and most of those cities had thousands of people.
Right. That was a lot of people out protesting, Fuck, man.
I don't know if you managed to make it to any rallies in 2020, but well, okay, so that's another thing, right? The whole situation in Flint, the sheriff went out there and talked to the protesters, and then they all walked together, and he was talking about the changes he's going to make to his department, and here we are 2 years later almost, and not a goddamn thing has changed. At the time, I was
close, but not quite accurate.
At the time I was pretty proud of Flint, right? Because like, oh well, look at everywhere else erupted into violence literally overnight, and here they're going to take care of it right.
Well, I mean, at least the sheriff had enough fucking sense to not come out there and try to get into a physical altercation with the fucking people marching, because it would not have been pretty. It's Flint. No. So at least they did the right thing there, as far as throwing their gear down to the ground and going, guess what? We're pissed too. What can we do to help? So at least it was a better response than what I've seen in other places.
Right, but what were they pissed about? Were they pissed about not being held accountable? No, the fuck they weren't. That's political theater.
Right. I'm just saying they handled it better than like the cops that were going out fucking swinging batons. That's all.
Agree with
Only
that.
in comparison. Not that they're fucking, needing to be glorified or anything for simply not attacking protesters for being sick of police brutality. I think they're fully aware that it wouldn't have gone in their favor in Flint, because guess who doesn't give a fuck about gun laws? The majority of Flint. The cops would have been run down.
They were in Flint Township, first of all, which has a privatized police force.
True.
So, I mean, like the sheriff's department didn't go in there baton swinging, but they had backup literally like 1,000 feet away.
True. But what I was wanting to get to was there not being any changes at all. There has been one, and I don't know any updates to tell you whether it was just more mediocre fucking, stage, or if it's actually being effective. But they did actually form a group from within the neighborhoods to monitor the fucking police and hold them accountable, of just, your normal people being an oversight committee.
I thought that was the city of Flint, not the sheriff's department.
I'd have to look into it and see, but I thought it was covering all of the above. If you operate in Flint, you're being observed by this oversight committee and held accountable.
I mean,
And
I would definitely like to find out more about that. Actually, I mean, it's a little off topic for this stream, but I do think that the idea is solid. But what I'm concerned about is the execution. Like, I
right,
mean, we've seen civilian oversight panels be completely ignored before.
right,
So
or
I mean,
become
what?
corrupted themselves.
Right. So I mean that does make me wonder. Like you said, if it's just more media bullshit or if it's like
Right.
actually happening, and I don't have the answer to that, honestly.
The thing is, even if it's being effective in curbing some of their harmful behavior, it's still just a small change that happened versus what needs to happen, which is abolishing the fucking police because they're
Yeah,
corrupt. It doesn't matter how many oversight committees we make if they're still able to go out and do the things that they do. And oh, well, good for you that you fucking found out and held them accountable. Like, yeah, okay, we've had a couple of weak, albeit, convictions for cops who have killed people recently. And they're getting, slap on the wrist shit of like manslaughter charges and bullshit like that. But why were they out there in the first place being allowed to actually fucking commit murders? I
yeah,
don't give a fuck if you got an oversight committee to hold them accountable afterwards. I give a fuck about them being stopped from doing that shit in the first place. Oversight committees aren't going to stop them.
right, right. And I mean,
Maybe
like, what are we supposed to do? Like, they make it sound like, oh, if we just weed out the bad apples, okay, but I mean,
how do
like,
you do that when the whole harvest is bad?
exactly.
There's
I will totally agree with what John just said, especially ICE, which
yeah,
I don't know the entire story. I learned a little bit about what's going on in Chicago from Chairman Jake in his last educational stream. Um, but I will reiterate, especially ICE. And the ATF, I mean, that might be one thing that we actually agree with libertarians on, let's be real.
right. Unless they're libertarian socialists and then they just don't realize that they're commies. Just saying, libertarian socialism is what libertarianism started in. That's its roots, is libertarian socialism, to both acknowledge self-determination of the individual as well as an obligation, an ethical obligation to care for your community. And they wanted to just get rid of that last part and be like, but voluntarism. And it's like, no shit stain. Don't do that to Marxist work. But yeah, they're just commies that don't know they're commies if they're actually libertarian.
If they're libertarian socialists, yeah. And I mean, honestly, actually, okay. So this is also a little off topic, but we've talked in previous streams about Vermin Supreme and his recent social media presence, right? Because I mean, he's been posting borderline commie shit. He's been posting anarcho syndicalist shit.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, so there's been some interesting conversations on these posts because well, I mean, he's a libertarian, but
I
most
think
of it's
he
actually been pretty decent,
right. It's
which
commie
really
shit.
surprises me because, like, a lot of these people are starting to realize, like, oh, well, the fucking libertarian parties just sell out. Well, not sell out. That's not the right word, but are just like Republican rejects.
Yeah, Republican light. Um, just slightly less fascism, and really, that never goes far enough. It's no fascism. This is the amount of fascism that's acceptable. If you even got a little bit in there, then you need to turn around and find where you fucked up, libertarians, or any other fucking flavor of fascist ideology that comes into play.
I think I have a meme that I want to share.
Yeah.
If I can find it real quick. If I can't find it real quick. Why was it searching? Never mind. Where I'm not finding the meme that I wanted. I thought it was going to be easy to find. Okay, moving on. Never mind. It was the one that was a burning cop car that said, "Be the light you want to see in the world."
Nice.
But
Nice.
I couldn't find it.
Get
So
behind putting that on the wall. Yeah. Yeah.
the wall, you say?
The wall. But yeah, like the live, laugh, love stickers that Karens put on their walls. We need some of these for commies to put on their walls.
Man, like if Nathan's still in the comments, like his coffee cup. That's the anti-fascist action flags that says
Oh,
"Live,
okay.
Laugh, Love" around the
Oh
outside.
yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. You know what's kind of funny is Amazon, of all fucking places, has a significant number of things that you will find if you search the word communist. And one of them is coffee mugs, and they've got a few cute ones, like with Marx's face on there, and I can't remember what all was written on those, but there was some cool shit, and I'm like, really, Bezos? I was bored looking through there, and like, I wonder if they have Tommy gear on here, and they do. They have cool T-shirts, dude. There's one coffee mug that said "Caffeinated Communist," and I was like, I need that. Um, but yes, Nate, please drop the link for those mugs. That's what the fuck's up. Matter of fact, anybody out there, if you have dope ass actual communist resources from which to acquire these items and distribute, please drop those links here. Because sure, we could find them anywhere, but who wants to buy commie gear from Bezos? I'd rather buy it from an actual fucking, you know, communist who's running their own business.
Yeah, or I mean, honestly, I'd rather buy it from even a mom and pop capitalist than a Bezos. He's got enough
Right.
money to build a dick rocket and take it on an 8-minute joyride, which is probably still longer than he gives his wife. But actually, I can't even say that. That's probably why his wife left him. Is what I should have said.
That's what I was just about to say. Like, there's reasons why she left, and that's probably one of them.
Anyway, back to the text.
The rebellion of the oppressed peoples of the world, along with the Negro Revolution in America, have opened the way to a new evaluation of history, a re-examination of the role played by the white race since the beginning of European expansion. The positive achievements are also there in the record, and future generations will applaud them. But there can be no applause now, not while the master still holds the whip in his hand. Not even the master's own children can find it possible to applaud him. He cannot even applaud himself. The negative rings too loudly. Slave catchers, slave owners, murderers, butchers, invaders, oppressors. The white heroes have acquired new names. The great white statesmen whom school children are taught to revere are revealed as the architects of systems of human exploitation and slavery. Religious leaders are exposed as condoners and justifiers of all these evil deeds. School teachers and college professors are seen as a clique of brainwashers and whitewashers.
I want to clarify a couple of things here. I understand where he's coming from and the point that he's trying to convey, but I don't think that it lies necessarily on school teachers and college professors. it's the people much higher up who create the curriculum, who publish and sell and, shall I say, market the textbooks. I mean, I'm not saying that teachers have no part in that, but most of the blame, I think, goes on the publishers of the textbooks and on school boards that accept these textbooks. I don't think that punching down on teachers is a productive way to have this conversation. That said, the overall point is spot the fuck on. That's just my 2 cents on it. And you're right, Nathan. Yeah, exactly. Fucking what don't they ridicule as critical race theory? Why are they so afraid of history? Did maybe their ancestors do some things that they don't want to? I'm not saying they should be held accountable for it, but they can't even like acknowledge their privilege or, you know, anything. Anyway, though, I'm going to get back to the text.
The white youth of today are coming to see, intuitively, that to escape the onus of the history their fathers made, they must face and admit the moral truth concerning the works of their fathers. That such venerated figures as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson owned hundreds of black slaves. That all of the presidents up to Lincoln presided over a slave state, and that every president since Lincoln connived politically and cynically with the issues affecting the human rights and general welfare of the broad masses of the American people. These facts weigh heavily upon the hearts of these young people. The elders do not like to give these youngsters credit for being able to understand what is going on and what has gone on. When speaking of juvenile delinquency, or the rebellious attitude of today's youth, the elders employ a glib rhetoric. They speak of the, quote, alienation of youth, end quote, the desire of the young to be independent, the problems of the father image and the mother image, and their effect upon growing children who lack sound models upon which to pattern themselves. But they consider it bad form to connect the problems of the youth with the central event of our era, the national liberation movements abroad and the Negro Revolution at home. The foundations of authority have been blasted to bits in America because the whole society has been indicted, tried, and convicted of injustice. To the youth, the elders are ugly Americans. To the elders, the youth have gone mad. The rebellion of the white youth has gone through 4 broadly discernible stages. First, there was an initial recoiling away, a rejection of the conformity which America expected and had always received sooner or later from its youth.
just to reiterate, so like there was an initial recoiling away, a rejection of the conformity which America expected and had always received. I can't speak for all of y'all, but I think most of us are fucking done with that. And the reason I paused it there is because this next line is another one of those situations where it's like, wow, that's probably even more relevant today. But anyway, back to the text.
The disaffected youth were refusing to participate in the system, having discovered that America, far from helping the underdog, was up to its ears in the mud trying to hold the dog down. Because of the publicity and self-advertisements of the more vocal rebels, this period has come to be known as the Beatnik Era. Although not all of the youth affected by these changes thought of themselves as beatniks. The howl of the beatniks and their scathing, outraged denunciation of the system, characterized by Ginsburg as Moloch, a bloodthirsty Semitic deity to which the ancient tribes sacrificed their firstborn children, was a serious, irrevocable declaration of war. It is revealing that the elders looked upon the beatniks as mere obscene misfits who were too lazy to take baths and too stingy to buy a haircut. The elders had eyes but couldn't see, ears but couldn't hear. Not even when the message came through as clearly as in this remarkable passage from Jack Kerouac's On the Road. At lilac evening, I walked with every muscle aching among the lights of 27th and Walton in the Denver colored section, wishing I were a Negro, feeling that the best the white world had offered was not enough ecstasy for me, not enough life, joy, kicks, darkness, music, not enough night. I wished I were a Denver Mexican, or even a poor overworked Jap. Anything but what I so drearily was, a white man disillusioned. All my life I had white ambitions. I passed the dark porches of Mexican and Negro homes. Soft voices were there. Occasionally, the dusky knee of some mysterious sensuous gal. The dark faces of the men behind rose arbors. Little children sat like sages in ancient rocking chairs. The second stage arrived when these young people, having decided emphatically that the world and particularly the USA was unacceptable to them in its present form, began an active search for roles they could play in changing the society. If many of these young people were content to lay up in their cool beat pads, smoking pot and listening to jazz in a perpetual orgy of esoteric bliss, there were others, less crushed by the system, who recognized the need for positive action. Moloch could not ask for anything more than to have its disaffected victims withdraw into safe, passive, apolitical, little non-participatory islands in an economy less and less able to provide jobs for the growing pool of unemployed. If all the unemployed had followed the lead of the beatniks, Moloch would gladly have legalized the use of euphoric drugs and marijuana, passed out free jazz albums and sleeping bags to all those willing to sign affidavits promising to remain beat. The non-beat disenchanted white youth were attracted magnetically to the Negro Revolution, which had begun to take on mass, insurrectionary tone. But they had difficulty understanding their relationship to the Negro and what role whites could play in a Negro revolution. For the time being, they watched the Negro activists from afar. The third stage, which is rapidly drawing to a close, emerged when white youth started joining Negro demonstrations in large numbers. The presence of whites among the demonstrators emboldened the Negro leaders and allowed them to use tactics they never would have been able to employ with all black troops. The racist conscience of America is such that murder does not register as murder, really unless the victim is white. And it was only when the newspapers and magazines started carrying pictures and stories of white demonstrators being beaten and maimed by mobs and police that the public began to protest. Negroes have become so used to this double standard that they too react differently to the death of a white. When white freedom riders were brutalized along with blacks, a sigh of relief went up from the black masses, because the blacks knew that white blood is the coin of freedom in a land where for 400 years black blood has been shed unremarked and with impunity. America has never truly been outraged by the murder of a black man, woman, or child. White politicians may, if Negroes are aroused by a particular murder, say with their lips what they know with their minds they should feel with their hearts, but don't. It is a measure of what the Negro feels that when the 2 white and 1 black civil rights workers were murdered in Mississippi in 1964, the event was welcomed by Negroes on a level of understanding beyond and deeper than the grief they felt for the victims and their families. This welcoming of violence and death to whites can almost be heard. Indeed, it can be heard in the inevitable words oft repeated by Negroes, that those whites and blacks do not die in vain. So it was with Mrs. Viola Liuzzo, and much of the anger which Negroes felt toward Martin Luther King during the Battle of Selma stemmed from the fact that he denied history a great moment, never to be recaptured, when he turned tail on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and refused to all those whites behind him what they had traveled thousands of miles to receive. If the police had turned them back by force, all those nuns, priests, rabbis, preachers, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, old and young, as they had done the Negroes a week earlier, the violence and brutality of the system would have been ruthlessly exposed. Or if seeing King determined to lead them on to Montgomery, the troopers had stepped aside to avoid precisely the confrontation that Washington would not have tolerated, it would have signaled the capitulation of the militant white South. As it turned out, the march on Montgomery was a show of somewhat dim luster, staged managed by the establishment. But by this time the young whites were already active participants in the Negro Revolution. In fact, they had begun to transform it into something broader, with the potential of encompassing the whole of America in a radical reordering of society.
I felt like that was a good place to pause it to come back in with our commentary here.
I'll unmute my mic this time so you can hear me, because the last time I was talking away responding to you, and by the time I realized my mic was off, you were talking again. But yeah,
I wanted to talk a little bit about before I dive into what he was just talking about, which I intentionally paused it before the 4th stage because he was talking about it being in its infancy then.
right.
Unfortunately, it's still kind of in its infancy today, all over again. Probably to a lesser extent than it was in like 19. I think it was 65 that the book came out, so he probably wrote it in like 63, 64. But Nathan said in the comments, I think before 2030 we will see an actual revolution, and I replied that there is so much work to be done before that happens. And then I just, of course, threw out that What Is to Be Done and State and Revolution, both by Vladimir Lenin, both give us a good idea of what needs to happen. And I mean, what is to be done is pretty self-explanatory right in the title.
Right.
But State and Revolution gives us like more insight on that. It's not just things that have to be done to make a revolution succeed. It's things that have to be done after the revolution succeeds to make sure that it stays successful.
That. Which is why the revolution must stay ongoing, as Castro said. It is ongoing.
Right.
Until there is a total change in perspective of the people where the exploitation of capitalism is not going to be fucking allowed again,
Yep.
that revolution must continue.
Yep. And basically, to put it in his words, until the class antagonisms are rectified, there is a need for a proletarian state.
Yep.
Nathan elaborated: act accordingly, make connections, raise communities, grab supplies, and organize.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Right. Community defense, I think, going back to the Black Panther Party, is a really good, well, maybe not to start. It's a little high profile for starting. But it's definitely something to think about. Nathan said this is why we won't shut down again, because they know we fight when we get time off. Look at 2020. The largest insurrection in American history happened in 2020, and we try to play it off like it was just a few protests.
Yep. It was not.
No. I mean, do I think it was a fully fledged revolution? No. And I don't mean any disrespect to the Black Lives Matter movement in saying that, but it was a spontaneous insurrection, which is good for being the spark of a revolution. But the revolution has to be carried. Lenin argued that it had to be carried by a vanguard organization. And even if you disagree with that, I don't think that they were across community lines organized in a way that would have been able to sustain a revolution, especially if, say, Twitter went down.
Right.
Yeah, Nathan said buy pews. I'm sure that you can get them at your local church. I couldn't even say it with a straight face. I tried, though.
Oh, man. By pews. Pew, pew, pew.
We had a pew. We had a couple of pews at Occupy.
We had a whole locker of pews.
Oh, see, I meant the pews that you sit on.
Those, oh, yeah, we had those too. We
Yeah.
had legit church pews in there for bench seating. Yeah. It's kind of fun. Like, hell, a lot of people, when it got really cold and it was kind of hard to crash in our tents, a lot of people were crashing on those pews in the mess hall tent because at least our wood burning stove kept it at like 70 fucking degrees in there, no matter what. Damn, that structure was well built. Go, Bob.
Yeah, that rest in power, Bob. We built a straw bale. I should say that Jay and Bob.
Jay and Bob, yes, together.
Our straw bale
fortress.
Yeah.
It was fucking great.
Nathan said, yes, we need lots of those long benches.
Lots of them. Lots of them. Lots of pews of all kinds.
Anyway, I'll shut up and get back to the text.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we didn't even talk about the text. Hold on. So.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
I forgot what I even wanted to add, honestly. It was about King's March on Montgomery, but I don't even remember what I was going to say.
I don't know, but he's hitting so many nails on the head there of like how the white community only started to give a fuck when they saw white bodies get brutalized in the streets. That it finally was a moment of like, oh fuck, there's more to this than just the racial discrimination, it's class discrimination. This was the beginnings of people seeing intersectionality and why the working class uniting is the genuine threat against capitalism.
Right. Right. Um, and I mean, the young whites becoming active in the so-called Negro Revolution did begin to transform it into something broader. I mean, if we fast forward at least 5 years after this, we have Huey P. Newton writing about revolutionary intercommunalism,
Yep.
which is ultimately the way to bring about the whole of America in a radical reordering of society. So it's kind of funny in retrospect to like be reading this text that was written before, like a few years before the Black Panther Party was even formed, and he was kind of predicting how that was going to go. Like
Right.
it can't just be a black revolution, and the Black Panther Party understood that.
Right. That's why they had the forethought to be planning things for, the Rainbow Coalition, and putting that together because they knew it was going to take everybody coming together.
And just to elaborate on that, I mean, these types of coalitions happen everywhere there's been a successful proletarian revolution, which, I mean, it might not have been written about at the time, but if you look at it, Russia itself would not have succeeded if it wasn't for several groups coming together across leftist ideologies as a whole, whether it be more anarchist leaning or anarcho syndicalists or democratic socialists, whatever. They all played a role, at least initially, in the Russian Revolution. In fact, it wasn't until almost a decade into it that Trotsky was an issue. Let's not forget that he led the Red Army for a significant portion of their civil war. So, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like when you're looking at a proletarian revolution, like using Russia as an example here, so much happened in that first 10 years. And there's no way that we can ever really get a grasp of what that era was like. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that there hasn't been books written about it, but there's no way that any book, no matter how well it's written, is going to give an accurate picture of what was going on in an entire, especially a country the size of Russia.
Right. It's huge.
But the point is that
so many books to get the different perspectives of people all over Russia.
Right. Right. But the point is, though, at the end of the day, it took the whole left to overthrow the feudal government. It took the whole left to overthrow the individualists. Same thing in China. I mean, yeah, the Chinese Communist Party was the driving force of the revolution, but on the other hand, it wasn't the only factor.
No, not at all.
I mean, same thing for Cuba, but I don't know. Cuba's a unique example in a lot of ways. I mean, let's not forget that when the revolution started, they weren't even Marxist-Leninists. Well, Fidel wasn't anyway. Che was definitely already on the left, but it was Raul that was a communist.
Right. I'm reading the comments here, or at least trying to with the glare.
Okay, I want to address Nathan's comment here because I agree with it for the most part. He said, which is also proof that Bernie is still based. He did his part. The revolution just never came. But he certainly did a lot for one man to help radicalize even the youth of 50 years later. And
Yeah.
you're spot on there. And I mean, honestly, like I kind of slid into liberalism a little bit for a couple of years after I realized that libertarianism wasn't the answer. And that was because of Bernie. So, I mean, it's kind of a double edged sword. On one hand, I radicalized because of Bernie, but on the other hand, I also slowed down my radicalization because of Bernie.
It's a Bernie. Right. But that's okay. At least you got there. It took
It took some books.
even as
That's
much
what
as
it
he
took.
well, yes, but before even the interest in the books, it took seeing that even as much as he was trying to do, with it still being knocked back by the fucking Republicans and the Democrats, both collectively pushing back against any type of social safety net plans that Bernie proposed. It took seeing that by somebody who's been in Congress for fucking decades, still struggling to accomplish those things, to really fucking get us to go, wait a minute, the neoliberal path of slight adjustments here and there doesn't fucking work. Reformism doesn't work. Because we've seen how much a few people have actually fucking tried and not gotten anywhere with it, even though they had major support on those things from the people. It also shows you right there that the governing body does not give a flying fuck what has the majority support of the people if it doesn't benefit their fucking pockets and the pockets of their fucking corporate funders. um, then they don't give a flying fuck. It's not to benefit them. They don't take these jobs to benefit the community, to actually be leaders and to serve the people. They take these fucking jobs in order to line their own pockets. Period, plain and simple. This right here is all you really need to go. Fuck this whole shit. Reformism doesn't work.
Pinko the Bear on Twitch said 10 Days That Shook the World and The History of the Russian Revolution are the basics books, I think. Anything beyond that might be best left to the non-org academic types. And that's totally fair. I'm actually writing down. I grabbed my notebook from the other side of the room so I can write those down. But, I mean, honestly, in terms of historical books outside of theory, I still haven't read this book I've had for almost a year about the Paris Commune. And I still fucking need to.
Right. But dude, that's the thing. Our list of books for the Rev Left Book Club will always continue to grow because there's always going to be something else that we have yet to find and dig into, as well as always going to be more stuff being written by other leftists that is going to be inspiring too. I mean, look, we've mostly been reading through books that were written 100 years or more ago.
With the exception of Bobby Seals and this
right.
one, which are about half
right,
that.
from the 60s. But we're about to, take a deep dive fully into Kwame Shakur's new autobiography that just came out,
Yeah.
So,
which, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how we want to do that because I don't want to read the whole thing like we did with this because he did his own. So,
right.
That being said, I do definitely want to have, maybe like panel discussions. Like each one will, like we can read excerpts from the book per se and then have discussions about each chapter as opposed to actually reading. Right.
We should also ask him about posting those videos of him reading it as partner content on our website so people can see that if they want to listen to the whole book being read by the author with collaborations.
I think to do that, we're going to have to get permission from the North Alabama School of Organizing.
Okay, yes.
Because, I mean, it's Kwame's book, obviously, but they're the ones hosting it. Exactly. Yeah. Which, I mean, basically, we were going to offer to do the same thing on Facebook instead of Zoom. So, I mean, I'm just glad that it's getting done either way.
Right. When we offered to do so is when we found out he was already doing so, and it was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
because I like hearing it from his own mouth and hearing his own elaborations on what he was discussing in those parts of the books, or books. Jeez, plural. Yeah, no, singular book. Smoke another one. But hearing it directly from him and being able to have that opportunity at the end for the discussion to ask him questions about that, it's pretty fucking cool. I dig it. Most authors will maybe do a book reading here or there of an excerpt, and he's doing the whole damn thing. I dig it. And yeah, I feel you, Nathan. Yep.
John said, my former self included, Republican brainwashing has us believing social programs hurt us poor. And that's pretty on the nose, man. Like, if you look at the rhetoric, that's entirely what it is.
Right.
And Nathan pointed out that you were right. A new study actually just proved that American public perception plays a 0% role in the sway of law.
Yep. All they care about
Pink,
is if they can profiteer on it. For example, okay, like all these states where we have pushed, gotten it on the ballot with enough signatures, going, we want to decriminalize marijuana, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, I don't know about decriminalization, but we can do legalization where there's still limitations. We're going to lock down every little fucking thing and make it where it's most profitable for corporations to build corporate marijuana farms. Like right now, there's fights going on in Michigan because they're trying to change the laws and fuck over our entire caregiver system there in favor of big corporations taking over the entirety of the marijuana supply in Michigan. Things like that. And it's like the only way that they will cede to things that the people actually want is if they can see an opportunity to profiteer off of it, as well as to cut the little guys out. If you're not a big corporation with millions to invest, then you're not going to be able to even afford the licensing, let alone setting up an actual pot farm.
right. I also just realized how long this chapter is, and we're barely halfway through it right now. So we're probably going to be splitting this into 2 episodes, seeing as we're already an hour and a half in.
That's okay. This can be a long dive.
Yeah, I mean,
As
honestly,
long as
this
y'all
is
are down.
probably this is. Oh, I mean, are you meaning to like do it in one piece?
Uh, yeah, let's keep going. As long as all of you in the audience are down to keep going, I'm down to keep going and finish this chapter today, even if it takes 2.5, 3 hours, because we're having some productive conversation here.
Well, I mean, the productive conversation is why I wanted to cut it in half, because at the end of a 3-hour stream, the last half hour is going to be us not saying anything at all.
Well, I don't know. I'm not quite that fried yet. Brain's still functional, but yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that come to mind when discussing all of these facets and how this system is built to fuck us. And yeah, Nathan, you're correct. He said, yeah, it's ridiculous. They want the tobacco companies to own a monopoly on the Mary Jane. They absolutely do. Long before, like, you even started to actually see states succeed in legalization, Marlboro had already patented their Marlboro Greens, packs of pre-rolls. Now, I
Yeah,
don't know.
that actually happened a long time ago. They still haven't done it because they're waiting for federal legalization.
Yep.
But they have invested a lot of money into companies that grow and process marijuana. Um, that being said, we skipped Pinko's comment here. 10 days, though, which was 10 Days That Shook the World is the full title, was a real-time, in-person observation of the Russian Revolution by American journalist and communist John Reed.
Nice.
I've actually heard that name. I'm not quite sure why, but that name is familiar, and I definitely want to read that. Like I said, I actually took the time to write it down. And I've been really slowing down on trying to add books to our list because we're so backed up as it is. Um, Also, I just remembered though, we can't do a full 3 hour stream tonight because at 7 Eastern, which is in a little under a half an hour, is Kwame's book reading. That's why we were doing it early to begin
Shit.
with.
You're right. I just saw the clock. You're correct.
Yeah, I totally forgot too. Like at first, I'm like, oh, well, if you want to keep going, I guess, yeah. But then I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I
Uh,
had a brain chart there thinking that we would just be pre-recording something else tonight. But yeah, no, Kwame's book reading is tonight.
Holy shit, there's so many comments to catch up on. Uh, Wither King, I think I'm saying that right, said hemp is such a. I did not mean to pin that. I meant to show it on the screen, but whatever.
Uh,
That's not the right one. Hold on.
nope, that's Nathan.
That's the one. That's the one that I wanted.
There we go. Hemp is
Sorry
such
about that.
useful material. It shouldn't not only be decriminalized, but everyone should be taught how to grow them. Goddamn right.
And I mean, I think of like, and I don't know the details on how they function, but I think of like agricultural education programs in the USSR. I mean, there's no reason that I guarantee hemp was part of it. I
Right.
guarantee it was.
We
And there's no reason that we shouldn't or wouldn't do something like that here.
Right. That's the thing. I mean, okay, look at how many things we have damaged the environment with between oil and logging for wood, etc. All of these
Cattle
fucking things
farming.
completely replaced with hemp. Well, you can't replace cow with hemp. I mean, hemp parts are high and, lots of nutrients and stuff that
I'm
are
not
delicious.
saying you can make meat out of it, but it's a hell of a lot more sustainable option. There's
Yeah.
more protein per ounce in hemp than there is in beef.
This is true. This is true. And it's delicious too. I like getting hemp hearts just to like snack on. They have a nutty flavor. They're delicious. Um,
I like the
yeah.
I really like them in smoothies. I hate protein powder, right? But I throw some hemp seeds in there and it adds a bunch of
Oh
protein
God.
and tastes
The
good.
flavor.
What?
Yeah. Right. Because they're like creamy and nutty and they're fucking delicious. But anyway, we can make hemp fuels, we can make hemp batteries, we can make hemp brick to build with, we can make hemp paper, all of these fucking things. And it's like, okay, how about we fucking stop with all of the destructive shit that we're doing to acquire the means for these fucking things and just fucking start growing a shit ton of hemp that actually replenishes the soil. It's sustainable. You can pull 4 crops a fucking year if you're somewhere that, has warmer weather, longer growing season. Like this, it'll grow any fucking where. Doesn't matter if you've got like dense black soil or if you've got sandy ass fucking soil. There is a strain of weed that will love it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Probably multiple, because I mean, let's not forget that while overall our biodiversity is seriously down, our biodiversity for pot,
Up.
yeah,
Yes. There's a bazillion fucking strains. Like,
yeah. Wither King said communal permaculture gardens with some hydroponic hemp on the side. Uh,
nice.
Gun Run, that's my ideal addition to society. Um, I'm not trying to disagree with you here, but I think instead of, more like, okay, so permaculture, I think is important, but I think that we should be looking into indigenous style um, gardening techniques and whatnot rather than white or colonizer permaculture, because we need to be able to return the land to what it used to be before we can ever really figure out how we're going to move forward, right? um, I'm trying to think of like how to word this, because like I'm trying to like put a decolonization like
Maybe I
perspective.
can help you with that. Because okay, permaculture, okay, the design of it as far as that goes, it is a beautiful concept, but it's literally taking a lot of those elements from indigenous growing methods, but leaving out the point of you need to be replanting that which naturally exists here, not foreign invasive species of plants, because we've seen that we've caused problems already with trying to bring certain plants with us to new environments, and then they outcompete everything else that's there and kill off the natural flora. So we have to bring that indigenous element back in and actually start replanting native species of plants where they fucking belong. So this is going to come down to some research depending on your location to find out what's supposed to be growing there first before you start planting and, getting your seeds and all of that stuff. That
Right.
element.
And I mean, just to clarify, I wasn't trying to say don't do permaculture. I was just
Saying
trying
do
to
it right.
say, right.
Do it right.
Educate yourself. There's a lot of really good indigenous content creators on YouTube that talk about, what types of plants grew in what areas and how to grow them. There's indigenous food bank, or not food banks, sorry, seed banks.
There you go. Yes. Um,
Um,
there's a lot of places that you can find, whether it's in person or online, that are indigenous seed keepers that you can access these from. Try to find someone locally. If you don't have resources yourself, find someone locally who knows, like, specifically what things you should be planting for where you're at and what to plant together. There's bound to be someone. And if you can't find someone, fucking look online, hit us up, and we'll see what we can do to help you find those resources.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
honestly, that's something that I'd like to dive deeper into in the future too.
Absolutely.
Um, we've just been really caught up, honestly, in these book streams because we fell so far behind. I mean, we took our little break for the end of the year, and that put us even further behind. And okay, I'm assuming that Scrublord is a troll. Do we have a Twitch troll? Are we setting a milestone right now?
Maybe, or
So
it's even trolling or sarcasm, but either way, thanks
on
for the
this
laugh,
channel, we
Lord.
say "fuck Joe Biden" like adults.
Right.
Get out of here with your infantile shit.
But make sure to note that we say fuck Joe Biden and fuck Trump. Two heads of the same monster, no different from each other.
And then he's talking about jab mandates. Yeah, this dude's definitely a Trumper. I think you're lost, buddy.
Right. But thanks for the attention. That's cute. Do we get to live in your head right
Okay.
now?
Hold on. This is fun. The lame stream commie media.
We are commie
I've
media.
heard time out.
What's against the
I've
law?
heard Tucker Carlson say more commie shit than CNN. So yet again,
Right.
are you lost?
Literally. You're lost.
I think you're lost. Let's go. Brandon doesn't say F you to anybody. Let's go. Brandon says, I have the IQ of an 8-year-old child.
Yeah.
How much time you got? What happened to the USSR? How about 80 years of color revolution?
Right.
Do you know what that means?
Probably not.
Nothing dumber than a commie. What's your highest level of education, Scrub Lord?
Right.
How many books
I've
have
got
you read
multiple
this year?
degrees. Right. When was the last time you read a book?
Well, seeing as he was born in 1963, don't know who puts that in their fucking username, but anyway, I would assume that he graduated right about 1979-ish, right? No, that's probably right about right. So I would assume the last time he read a book was probably right about 1979-ish.
How many times does communism have to fail before you comments figure out that it sucks? Wow.
How
You really need
many
to
hundreds of millions
yourself.
of people have to be killed by
Capitalist.
capitalist economies, capitalist means of productions to figure out that it sucks? You're asking us if we are incapable of learning. But I still stand by you probably haven't read a book since about 1979 or so.
Wow, it's really weak boomer shit. It really is.
Yeah,
It's kind
that 1963 is really shining, isn't it?
sure is.
Way to go, John. Your dumbass president couldn't even get a wall built. I thought Mexico was going to pay for it.
Right, Nate. Yeah, the algorithm doesn't care if you hate us or love us. It just likes that you were here. So once again, thank you for the attention. That was cute. I like getting trolls. It's entertaining, especially boomer trolls with really weak arguments. Because you're uneducated and you swallowed the entire fucking bullshit of Red Scare propaganda. You bought the
Look,
bullshit.
man, like I can understand licking the boot, but you don't got to deep throat it, bud.
Right, right. Don't forget to tickle the balls. Anyway. You're one of them, shitbrick. He's saying enjoy your stream with your loads of viewers. You're one of them. You're here. For some reason, you're here. We do enjoy our streams, including when weirdos like you show up. Scrub
Yeah.
Lord. That's
Well,
still wondering, like what did this boomer think they were achieving with that name? Did you think that was edgy? Because honey, that couldn't cut soft butter.
I don't
Anyway,
even really know what to say.
thanks for the
Wow.
attention.
Yeah. So, that being said, I would like to finish this chapter in the next couple days rather than waiting 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We can probably pick this back up tomorrow and do the other half of the chapter, which this isn't a great spot to cut it, but I also don't want to miss Kwame's stream. But we've covered the first 3 stages of whites getting involved with the so-called Negro Revolution, and the fourth stage, which he described as in its infancy, in 1965 or so, is still happening today. So I would like to, I guess, that's the longest one out of these 4 stages. That's the longest one. So, there's no way that in the next 9 minutes that we're going to get through that. So,
We might as well take a quick break and hop into Kwame's Zoom.
yeah.
Anybody who wants to join us there, can we pop that up on the page too, Rob, if you have that link handy, or in the comments even here too? So you guys can join us over there if you'd like. And you have
And
tomorrow.
make sure to turn into, lame stream commie media.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
God.
I love how he added to our viewership for so long just to try to troll.
I mean, it did work. We didn't get back to the book, but we were already about to wrap it up anyway.
We were already there, yeah. Yeah. This was just tail end stuff. Hi, Emily. Yes, better last minute than ever.
I think that we lost him, though. Did we hurt his feelings?
Maybe. Maybe. He didn't like hearing that he was deep throating a boot. He's probably
No.
homophobic as fuck and imagined it was a man's boot. At least when I
Anyway,
get the balls. Anyway, I love how feet have those too. Anyway,
I will be sharing the link to Kwame's Zoom meeting on the page shortly following the end of the stream.
Yes,
Yes, Emily, you
you
missed our
missed a troll.
troll, Scrublord 1963.
Yes,
He hasn't said anything since I asked him if he read a book since he graduated high school, which would be about what 1979.
Well, yeah, I see what she said. This isn't, but he was a boot deep throater, and your boyfriend felt the need to tell him so, and I totally support that.
I was just like, well, I can kind of like understand licking the boot, but you didn't have to go ahead and deep throat it. And then he disappeared. Anyway, sorry.
Thank you, Wither King.
Yeah,
This is what happens when stoner counties bring you the news or educational resources. Oh man, smoke them if you got them. Fucking A. This has been fun.
we will be. What time do you want to do this tomorrow? Let's just set it up right now and get it out of the way. The normal
That's what I was
time.
asking. Do you have tomorrow off from work?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to do it earlier like this one was, or do you want to do it at 8 like usual?
I mean, I
8
would.
might be safer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll have more of our regulars in here. I mean, Wade's at work. Natalie came in to tell us she was at work. I'm sure they're not the only two. And it'll also give us a little bit of an opportunity to promote before tomorrow. And yeah, I'd rather just get the whole chapter done while it's still fresh,
Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm with that completely. Emily, you have a good point. People might be busy on Friday nights. However, I'm also thinking because I have to pick the motorhome up from the shop tomorrow, and I don't know what time I'll have to pick it up, but they're open until like 6 or 7. So I figured
how about
if we
this?
did the same, that would make it safer.
We can pre-record it whenever we have time tomorrow, and we'll air it Monday at the earlier time because it'll also be Kwame's book reading day. So it'll still be 5 p.m., just like today's was, 5 p.m. Eastern time.
Except on Monday. Then we can promote it, too.
Right. And it should still be fresh enough that we haven't forgotten everything we heard today.
Right. Okay, that works. Because, yeah, Emily is right. Friday nights do get busy. But, yeah, for those of you who are new viewers on Twitch, we typically do our current event stream Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. And for the book pieces, those are usually Thursdays at 8, but for right now, we're going to be doing them at 5. So that it doesn't conflict with Kwame's book reading, because we want to be able to attend that too. But, sometimes we air stuff on Mondays for these too. Just depends what all we've got going on. Yep, that's the book right there. It's Kwame's autobiography. And I'll just warn you right now, even reading the prologue is just going to grab you and yank you right in. And you're going to be going, fuck, that was a wild ride.
Right. I'm just going to go ahead and end the stream. I'm not going to play the outro song today because we have 3 minutes to get in Kwame's stream.
Okay,
the song is longer than that.
Slap his link in the comments real quick?
I don't have it in front of me. Do you?
You don't have it? I do not. I don't even have my phone out here with me.
Hold on. Actually, I got a notification that it's about to start, so I will have the link here. Give me just 1 second. This is being hosted by the North Alabama School for Organizers.
And yes, you heard that right. A literal school for revolutionizing people. I fucking love it.
And I am sharing the Facebook event link. So the Zoom link is in that. So yeah. Anyway, the link is right there. That will take you to the event. So that way you can set it up to get reminders each Monday and Thursday. Yeah, Monday and Thursday. And that's all. See you guys on Monday night for part 2 of this chapter, and Tuesday night for the current event stream. We love you guys, and all power to the people.
Fucking A. Much love.